Well, hello Internet people, this is John with Ozarks Back Roads. We're in the shop today. We got the Versys here. We're getting ready to take a little trip out west on it this fall, and we're going to be doing some dirt roads and some gravel roads and stuff out there, out in western Colorado and eastern Utah around Moab, and we're going to ride the Moki Dug way. I'm going to change tires today on this thing and get something a little more capable. Not a lot more, but somewhat more, I guess. We're going to put a set of these these Metzeler Tourance Next tires on the Versys and see how they do out on the gravel and the dirt. See if they're really any better than just a regular old street tire. It's got the Bridgestone the T30s, the Battle Axe T30s on it. Came on it stock. So we'll switch these over. Stick around, we'll tear into this bike, see what's involved on getting these tires changed on this Versys. We're going to start with the front wheel here, so to get this off we're going to have to take the calipers off of both sides. So we'll go ahead and take the caliper off, and on the left side here we've got the sensor wire for the speed sensor, the wheel sensor right here. We'll have to take it off too, so we can. It's going to come with the caliper. Then on our caliper, we'll kind of give it a little twist, push the pads back just a little bit, slip it off of the rotor. Okay. So now I'll go around to the other side and take the other caliper off. It's the same thing, just the two bolts. There's no sensor on the other side. I've got my scissor jack under my header. The bike's sitting up on the center stand back here, so I can raise the front wheel. I've got it just kind of neutral, where it's just barely, a little bit of it's on the ground, a little bit of it's not. It's got a little bit of weight, but try to get a neutral feel for it there. We've got a pinch bolt here on the bottom of the fork leg that clamps around that axle. It just needs to be loose. It doesn't have to come out. And this, on the Versys here, the axle, you actually just unscrew the axle. It screws into the bottom of the leg on the other side. So you need a 22 millimeter Allen bit to do this. It's pretty tight. And we should just be able to unscrew that. Lets the axle slide right out. So now our wheel's loose. We can go ahead and raise the bike now. Look at there, boy, that's simple. Rolled right out of there. I always take my rotors off before I change my tires. It's really hard to spoon a tire on and not get your tool into your rotor, and I don't want to bend the rotor. So I always take them off. These rotor bolts you Loctite these in. They're Loctited from the factory. They used Loctite on them. So I find it's best on the rotors, on these rotor bolts, they're an Allen key, but you can round these off, especially if you have trouble, if they're really tight. I find that I have the best luck using an impact when I take these off. You get that kinetic jar when you first hit that trigger, and that'll pop that Loctite loose instantly and then come out. You won't risk rounding out your Allen head as much using an impact to take them off as you would just trying to do it with a wrench. I've rounded them out with a wrench before, but I've never rounded one using an impact, or haven't yet. Just make sure you got that dude in reverse before you hit that trigger. On this Versys, we've got a gasket that sits in between the rotor disc and the wheel right here, the wheel hub. I think it's got a coating on it. I think it's probably for sound, for a brake noise, brake squeal. I think it's an insulator for the disc. Because I've got new ones, I didn't know what kind of shape they would be in. I'll probably just reuse these. Buzz the rotor off of this side, and then we'll see about getting this tire changed. So I'm just going to kind of pop those loose, kind of in the order that you would crisscross pattern. Once they're loose, there it goes. going. I believe we got it squared now. And the other thing that really helps when you're changing tires is to lubricate your bead and the rim. That makes all the difference in the world. So I've got this pushed down where I can just spray. I like to use my little rim protectors. Keep my rims looking good as they can. I don't think it's going to be. There we go. I'd say we got her on the run there. Alright, we got her started. Let's see if we can. There it goes. Cool. We're ready to mount this new tire. I'm going to spray a little love on that rim, and same thing on this bead of this tire here. I got my valve stem at the bottom here, and my wheel, I'm on the left side of the wheel, so I'm rotating this way, so I got to make sure I get my tire on the same way. So I've got my valve stem down at the bottom, and I've got a red dot here on my tire, and that indicates the light side of the tire. So I'm going to put the light side of the tire on the valve stem, which should be the heavy side of the rim, hopefully. With the lube on this, we can just push this on. Kabang, it's on there. Red dot here. I'm going to check this rotation one more time. I'm going this way. Yep. My arrow's pointing that way, so we're good. There we go. We can start getting this on. That lube, man, that makes all the difference. Put these rim protectors on. There we go. I felt it drop down in there good then. Start taking small bites now. There she is. And I've got a rim. This is something that I've done before, and it sucks. I've got a rim protector inside the tire. Can you see that? I pushed it off in the wheel and then the bead went on. That sucks. Here we go. Here we go. We got her going now. Tire around. There she is. Come out of there. I might get an attitude if I did that twice in a row. There we go. Lesson learned. Pay attention to your... Don't let one drop down in there when you're not paying attention. Hey, we got our valve stem in. Let's see if we can air this thing up. Boom, boom. That's pretty good. About 35 pounds. Check it and make sure it's holding air tomorrow. As always, check your bearings, kind of roll them and make sure they feel like they got grease and they're not dry. Those feels great. Of course, if they don't have no miles on them, they're practically brand new. But it's good to check them. Well, before I mount my rotors back on the hub of this wheel, I'm looking down in these holes where the bolts go, and they're just full of Loctite. And I've had a hard time. I can't get the bolts to start back. They turn real hard. They're not going to torque properly. You're not going to be able to tell what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and run just a little tap through here, each one of these, and clean out the Loctite out of these threads so my bolts will go in nice and easy and I can torque them properly. This is the metal gasket that goes between the rotor and the wheel hub. We'll use the blue Loctite on these, and I won't have to run tap through the holes next time around. This stuff cleans out a little better when the bolt comes out. Okay, I've ran these down finger tight, and now I'm just going to go through and just give them just a little snug in my torque pattern here. Crisscross back and forth, try to pull this down nice and level. I'll go ahead and torque this to my specified, I think it's 21 pounds. We'll go in a crisscross on this. Now we'll flip it over and do the other side. This thing's rolled around to the heavy sides on the bottom, and it's pretty bad out of balance. If I move that up, it flops right down. I'm going to put a wheel weight. I got a 2 ounce here, close to this spoke as I can get it. There it goes. And I think it's going to take more than that. Yeah, it's going back up where the weight is. So it's pretty bad out. So I'll put a couple right about there. And we'll see if that's enough, if it goes back to the top or what it does. Woohoo! I think we got it. Alright, it's not moving no matter where I put the weights. It just kind of settles in and does a little rock and stops. So I think we're good on the balance right here. We'll mount this bad boy up and we'll be halfway done. See if we can get this wheel back on. Kind of roll it back in place here. I've got my spacers installed. I'm just going to let this down a little bit. I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on the threads on this axle. Let's see if we can get it through here. I believe she went through. The book says 96 foot-pounds. I don't think it's going to come loose. 22 pounds on that. If you can keep from forgetting, it's helpful to go ahead and pump your front brake calipers back out after you put those calipers back on. Now we're going to start on the back end here. I'm not going to bore you with all the details on changing this tire. It's the same as the front. The only differences here is our axle's a little different. We've got to remove this retainer here, and then we'll take our nut off and we'll loosen up our adjuster here for the chain and let the wheel forward so we can get our chain off. This is pretty tight. That off. Got our little block with the washer on the outside here. We'll take that block off. Well, on this side we've got the same thing with the adjuster nut here. We're just going to loosen back that jam nut off and run that bolt in. So I've got the speed sensor like we had on the front wheel here I'm going to remove, and then I've got the 2 caliper bolts here on this caliper, and they'll come off together. Should be able to push our axle bolt right out. Block kind of locks into it there, you can see it. And that releases our wheel. I'm going to roll it forward as far as I can and slip the chain off the sprocket over here and just kind of lay it to the outside of the sprocket. That'll help. When that bracket comes off, the axle goes through it. When we put that back on, we got to be sure and get that notch in there. This block has got a wider inside here. The mark, there's marks up and down, but this big end needs to go forward for that adjustment nut to sit against. I was expecting a little more fight than that. Adjust this chain up and put the caliper back on. I believe we're going to be in business. Get our little wheel sensor plugged back in here and get it back on. That wasn't too bad at all. Didn't take long to change that tire. That went a lot faster than the front tire. We got that all back together. We got our inch of slack in our chain. I got our Motion Pro tool on here pointing the way. My sprocket's in line with my front sprocket. The chain's straight. Torqued that to 81 pounds and put a new cotter key in it. So I think we're in good shape. Got our brake caliper on, our sensor in on the other side. I think the only thing left to do now is to take it for a ride and see how these new Metzlers do. These Tourance Next. They got pretty deep, pretty big chunky tread sipes cut in them there, so they ought to get a little bit of a bite on a gravel road, I'd say. Well, we're out on the Versys with our new Metzeler Tourance Next tires on. We've probably got I don't know, I've been maybe 100 miles or so today, I guess. I've done some little bit of gravel roads and stuff on them. They got good bite. The front end doesn't wash out or anything. It holds pretty well. And surprisingly, I can't tell that they're any noisier than the Bridgestone T30s that came on the bike. I really can't hear any tire noise on the highway. I figured they'd be a little noisy. So I think the tires are, as far as I can tell, they're going to be Moki Dugway capable. I'm not going to be limited by tires. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me, watching a tire change video. But we got her done, and I think it's a good outcome. So, come back and we'll go some places on these tires and see how they do a little bit longer term. I appreciate you hanging around. Come back and see me. Take care of yourselves.